Hello there, welcome back. It's been a few months, or 2 months really, since I've been doing videos. I usually take time off over Christmas anyway, so it was going to be a month. There's always a month, but it's been a bit longer because of real life. Things happen, you end up taking longer to get back to doing this kind of thing. That's really the reality, is just real life in the way, and I never. So I planned these videos a while ago and I haven't got around to them. So you probably noticed from some of the subjects that some of the films I'm covering that have been released recently, but it's been a while since they've released. Some of them are on streaming already or currently streaming. So it's taking a bit of time really to get back into the way of things. Just that's the way it goes. Especially the first one. The first one has been in cinemas since December. And is now in digital in America and probably come over here soon as well. And that's Michael Mann's Ferrari, which I did not think was going to come to my local area, honestly, because normally films like that, even though it's in a trailer, usually you can see, where I live, you can see trailers and then not get the film. It does happen sometimes. So I didn't expect to see it. I thought I'd see it in streaming later on because I didn't expect to see it, but I actually came to my local, one of my locals anyway, and so I managed to see Ferrari. So that was a very nice surprise. And of course, I've already made my best of 2023 list, and this film was the best of 2023. And that's the way it goes sometimes. I mean, what can you do? I thought I'd kind of got it worked out, like what my favourites of that year were, but you know, that's life for you. I'm now back with this equipment trying to work it out again. Like, what does this do again? So this camera got not long before Christmas, so it's still a bit weird to me. So if it's a bit off, I'm figuring it out. So okay, because it tends to zoom in and out a little bit because it's auto zoom, and I can't remember how to put it on manual. So that's technology for you. But the threat against technology is one of the themes of Ferrari. Ferrari is about a guy, Enzo Ferrari, played by Adam Driver in the film, who's obsessed with motor racing. He was obsessed from when he was young. He was a racer. At a certain point he couldn't race anymore, but he became a builder. He built a company around race car driving. And now in 50s Italy, he's a middle-aged man with lots of problems in his life, and he's trying to prove himself. He's got a rival team that lives in the same area as he does. I mean, they share the same racetrack to practice in. That's how kind of tied together these teams are. So it's a very strange situation for everybody. It's a race-obsessed situation, and essentially, it's one of those things is one will succeed, one will not, and basically it's Ferrari trying to make sure his company is the one that succeeds. He's got the good drivers, he's got the good cars, but he's a guy who pushes everybody to maximum success. He's a guy who really wants to succeed, and he'll manipulate his drivers to be rivals with each other. So they want to outdo each other. They make sure everyone thinks they should be the pole position. So he manipulates people. Any new driver he gets, he manipulates them to make them think that they're not good enough for the team. He pushes his team of engineers to be better than any rival could possibly be, because he knows part of the success of the cars is the cars and part of it is the drivers. He needs both sides of it working. So it's a typical Michael Mann protagonist who's obsessed. But as you get in a lot of Michael Mann films, he's also got a private life that is out of control, and he's not very good at dealing with. You find out he's married. Him and his wife have a kind of difficult relationship. Their son has died recently. They both are close to the son, and that has left like a chasm between them both, and they're also a lot of the angst about the situation comes out in each other. He's also got another family that he cannot acknowledge. So he's got a son he can't acknowledge. He's got a girlfriend he can't marry. So he's going between two different homes constantly, as well as try to work the racetrack out, and as well as just try to drive his team forward and not go bankrupt, because he's spending way more than he's making, and he's using the name of Ferrari to sell cars to keep his team going, but he's really obsessed with racing. Because he's dealt with drivers he can get close to who have died, because it's such a dangerous profession. He keeps the drivers at emotional distance as well. And very early on, one of his drivers dies. Like the first section of the film was the death of one of the drivers because someone broke the lap record. He tells his driver to go back out and break it for his team, which causes the death of his own driver. So this is not a sympathetic character we're dealing with here. One of the joys of the film is they don't even try and make Ferrari, likeable. He is who he is, and it's about his mental processes and how he deals with things and who he is and who other people are around him, rather than try to say, oh, he's a wonderful person. He's not. He's a bit of a dick. And Adam Driver plays him as that. Adam Driver plays him as complicated, but also he doesn't try and lean on us to find him sympathetic at all. It's like, make your mind up about who you think this guy is. I'm going to play him. That's it. That's all I've got to do. He's not begging for sympathy ever. And here's Michael Mann. He's like, this is the guy he is. This is his problems. And we're going to do a story about him. And I think the film received lukewarm response because I don't think it was a film people wanted. When they heard of a race car driver film, they thought there was going to be a lot of racing. There's not. There's some. It's part of his life, but the other part of his life is his family stuff, and it's just as explosive as the racing stuff. And that's what Michael Mann's going into, because in his other film, Michael Mann always had the family side of things as well as the profession, but usually the professional side kind of dominated, and the personal side was there. It was a linchpin of a lot of stuff, but it was less screen time. And this one is much more screen time, and I think people were annoyed at that. It's the same thing happened with Ali when he does stuff where Ali, one of the criticism of Ali was there was not enough boxing, and it was all about the person behind the legend and the difficulties he faced. And it's one of those things where it's not doing the greatest hits. It's not going to something like Heat, where there's a genre base you can go to, which is a cat and mouse game between the criminals and the crooks. The criminals and cops. Criminals and crooks. There's a bit of that, but not much. But here it's much more the personal side. It's the same thing Miami Vice had the same situation where there was them undercover, but there was a lot of stuff to do with what was going through their minds, and it was less melodramatic than people expected. And same with Public Enemies. Michael Mann shifted in the 90s inside the Insider to a different type of film that the fans of the earlier films, some liked, some didn't, but it was a shift. It's the same with David Cronenberg had a shift in the late 90s as well. His films became quieter, became much more military adaptations, and they weren't the expressive horror that you got before. Michael Mann did the same thing. He adjusted because he's older, and certain things you might be excited by when you're in your 40s, you might not be as excited by when you're in your 60s. It's just life. And obviously in this film he found it more interesting with the obsession of this guy and what that was about, rather than trying to have tons of fun car chases. So this is actually sort of like the Red Shoes for Michael Mann, but it's about car racing. It's the same way in the Red Shoes you had a character who was super focused on his art to the expense of everything else. And this thing you've got Ferrari kind of the same way. He kind of has to his feel life's messier than the character in Red Shoes, but it's still, he's still got that dynamic, that old-fashioned dynamic of professionalism and your craft as you really. But this is like a messier version of it, the emotionally messier version of it, and it doesn't have the expressive dance scenes. What you do is you have a couple of really good car races, and the thing this film does is shows you how dangerous it is, how difficult it was for anyone to do this. Like this is not modern cars where the cars are really slick and have a lot of protection. This is they're basically rockets, you know. You have to do quick turns and it's very dangerous, and only a few people can actually do it and survive. It's like it takes a lot of concentration. It takes a lot of skill. So people have to have the kind of have to go through the hours of doing it to have the body used to the pressures on your body and the ability to actually do the driving long term at a certain level, which only a few people can really do. And then they're trying to up the cars to make them even harder to drive and make them more successful, which means more pressure on drivers. So there's this thing of the obsessive nature of to be the best in this industry is something that Ferrari takes very seriously. But it's not his life on the line, it's other people's life on the line. It's his livelihood on the line, but it's not his life. So, and that's something the film never has a problem with showing. It's like, yeah, he puts other people at risk, not himself. And it's all about this kind of obsessive person who does have emotions, but his way of dealing with emotions are old-fashioned and sometimes feels about cold, but it's his way of processing them. Penelope Cruz plays his wife, who has to deal with this lunatic husband, and she's dealing with the death of her son as well. And she's terrific because she's like someone who's sometimes rational, sometimes not, but she's obviously been downgraded in the society in the eyes of people who all just see Ferrari, not her, even though she's his partner. And he needs her for actually to focus on in lots of ways. He kind of needs her more than he would like to admit. And so it's an unfair, uneven relationship that causes a lot of problems. And there's no way around it. It's just the way they've been brought up, the way their society is. They've only a certain way they can react to things. And she's obviously trapped with Ferrari and his family and his ways of doing things, and which is unfair to her, but it's like she just has to live with it, really. So the film's about the problems of that, and the problems of the other women who he actually has basically has a marriage to. He can't acknowledge it, but they're basically kind of a couple as well. So that's a different relationship where he can be a bit soft and a bit kinder. He's not tied to the racing, so you see another side to him. But it's not a side he can bring into his other life. It actually is his escape from his other life, and it's like the complications of that. Like what he's like in his work would not transfer well over to what his life's like with his second family. So it's a complicated guy, it's a complicated setup, and a basic set of morals that do no longer really exist. They kind of exist, I suppose, in Italy in certain areas, but they're probably diluted over time. But they don't really exist for the modern world, which has a different set of values that is much more analytical about themselves. Maybe, probably to a fault. This one, the fault is he could be less he could be more analytical about himself, but his way of dealing with life is to be focused on his goals. It's that kind of mindset that man's interested in, and that's why he wants to make this film. Now, this script was done years ago, and it just needed to be finessed apart. Apparently, most of it was fine. It was just finding that last little bit that Michael Mann had to do because the original writer died. And Mann just gave him the full credit because apparently most of the script was his. It was just finding those last little bits that make it work. So it was in development for years. It was one of those projects Mann always went back to between other projects. And it was made independently because Michael Mann's last film, The Black Hat, was a financial disaster. Even though when you see the director's cut, you realise he screwed over the studio. I mean, they'd released the director's cut, it would have been fine. But there we go. The film is wonderful. I'm probably not doing justice because there's so much you can talk about how great the driving scenes are, how brutal the crashes are. The crashes are like, did I just see that? That's horrible. Without actually being gratuitous. It's just the way it's been edited, the way it's been set up for maximum impact. And it's like you can feel the reaction to the crowd. You watch it to these crashes because it's like, oh, I never expected that horrible or that affecting. Really, it's less horrible than affecting. and just the sense of how dangerous this is and how insane and how driven these drivers are. I mean, that's the thing, is the drivers were as driven as Ferrari. It wasn't like he was coercing people into doing something for him. They wanted to be that person, that great driver, when it was very difficult to be that great driver. Ferrari's taking advantage of people's long-standing ambitions. It wasn't like he was saying, "Oh, you could be a great driver." Like, these people were coming to him, knowing what he was, and still wanting to be there. So the film is not like "Oh, Ferrari was horrible." It's much more like, this is what the life was. This is what the values were, and this is what the situation was. And make up your own mind about what he was and who he was and what your values are compared to his, and what you do for your own obsessions and how you compartmentalize your life and your work. But it is a wonderful film. But it isn't a film that will be like, it's not trying to say, "Oh, look at me, how wonderful I am." It's like, this is the obsession, this is what the film's about, this guy. It's not going to have flashy scenes. There's a couple of really good like car races, but that's it. The rest of the time it's talk, and it's about the lifestyle of this guy and who he was, who people around him were, what decisions he had to make were, and it's about the complications of life rather than the easy answers that would make everyone happy to say, oh yes, this is a. There's a lot of films nowadays where the simplistics are put in and people view that as profound when it's not really profound. It's just an evasion, because people like easy answers, and this film's not about easy answers, so that's another reason why it probably was not that well received. Although it got a lot of respect, it's just one of those films that people thought was going to be an Oscar contender. It's too good for the Oscars. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it inspires you to go see Ferrari. Ferrari is definitely worth seeing. It is wonderful. So that's me for now, and I'll be back soon with another video.